Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Granville D'Souza, and I am the CEO of EQ World. So today I'm going to do a presentation on the Enneagram, and the Enneagram is a system of understanding personalities, your preferences, your thinking, your energy, when we say personality, it could be your preferences, things that you avoid, things that you have a natural inkling towards, something which could be a God-given gift, whatever they call it. Besides that, the Enneagram also shows you quite a few other different things, how you may be living your life right now, how it might be going into a kind of unhealthy zone, or it could be a really very healthy zone, whichever one. It's going to actually tell you quite a lot of things. And it will also show you how you may be functioning within a team, what could be your greatest gifts, and what could be your different limitations you have when you move into a team or when you function within a team itself. So I hope this helps you. It would be definitely more than 1 hour. So I hope this presentation will help you to be a lot clearer about what you may want to do as you move on in terms of being a much better version of yourself. Enjoy the presentation. So this is the presentation called Enneagram Principles and Applications, a kind of summary of the Enneagram and some of its applications. I love this quotation called, "My eyes are open, but I can't see the light." So what does that really mean? Everyone wakes up in the morning, eyes wide open, and we believe we can see everything we can see. But a lot of us are not able to see the things we need to see. We can choose to see certain things, but sometimes we can't see the things that we need to see about our lives. Hence, the Enneagram helps us to see the things that we actually need to see. But sometimes, when you think of blind spots, it's about unconscious incompetence, right? Unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. So the Enneagram kind of gets you to see things that you may not have known before, but you know now. And, at a certain point initially, you may not know what to do with it. So hopefully this presentation gets you to see what you need to do about your life, and then brings you into conscious incompetence, and then hopefully conscious competence, and then it becomes unconscious competence. All right. So I think you've heard these phrases before, and let's see how we can do that with this whole system of understanding the self. So this is the Enneagram, a little bit of history. I don't like to go too deep into history, but a kind of definition first. It's from two Greek words, Ennea called 9, and gram means something that's drawn or written. So this is a diagram, which is a kind of representation about how we live our lives and what our personality is like and what we can do with being a much better version of ourselves. It's got a lot of history, starting 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. And although this is not so crucial for you to know, I thought I'll just cover a little bit. It started off in Asia as well as Middle East, and it made its way through Sufism. And this person called Gurdjieff, who's a poet and philosopher, he kind of brought it through Europe. And in the Middle East, it started from the Middle East as well, through the Kabbalah, through Christian mysticism, basically a lot through spirituality and religion. And then it reached through South America, through Oscar Icazo, who was a psychologist, and then finally to more contemporary times called Claudio Naranjo, who's Chilean, and he passed away, I think, about 3 years ago. So then from the 1970s, from the US, it kind of spread through many different means, and is now being taught in all kinds of different domains: business, arts, parenting, healthcare, spirituality, psychotherapy, religion, very extensively used in parts of Asia, definitely big time in America. And it's one of the greatest tools on the understanding of the personality system. There are about 3,000 books written on the Enneagram. So there's really a lot. If you go onto Amazon and you go on Google, Enneagram is one of those tools which has been most widely written about. Okay, so it can be very deep. Just in front of my face, in fact, I'm not sure if you can see it, but look at this book. Can you see it? Right. So this is just one of the books I read about it. That's called Enneagram. I know the kind of, well, sorry, you can't quite see the title, but doesn't help me showing it like that. No thanks to the background. Okay, so the Enneagram, kind of repeated that just now. Enneagram, a circle inscribed 9 points, and it's a 9-sided figure. So in this 9-sided figure, you've got 9 different representations of different personalities. You've got these 9 different personalities starting with the type 1. You get all these different kinds of terms, but it may not get you to understand exactly what it means straight away. So I'm just going to kind of do a very quick description of each of the types. So sometimes they are called like the type ones. There are 9 different personalities, and the type ones are called the perfectionist, reformer, crusader, moralist. Now, for this type, they are basically called perfectionists because they look into details, they look into structure, they look into system, they look into getting things right. So how do I get things right? Now, there's a healthy version and there's a not so healthy version. The healthy version, number one, is the kind of person who can let things go. They are okay with dealing with gray areas. They're more flexible. They're open. Whereas the unhealthy one is the one that cannot let go. They want things perfect. They hate mistakes. They're quite inflexible. They're quite pedantic, or they kind of are very critical over small different things. So imagine someone being an engineer, right? Engineers need to get things right. But if you get someone who's a perfectionist, they get angry quite often. They get irritated quite often, which is the emotion that this type actually faces quite a lot. The giver, think of the giver as like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa is a big giver. And these are people who live to provide. They live to make a difference. They are very self-sacrificing. They are usually very nice. They are gentle. They are, yes, just very, very nice people who give a lot, who help a lot, who want to make you feel happy. It's seldom about their interests. It's always about somebody else. So imagine someone in your team who's always providing, always giving, always lending a hand. Yeah, you might wonder, are there such people in this world? Yes, the type 2s. But I'll explain more. It's not just totally that personality. Remember, we are a mixture of everything. In fact, I did not quite say that yet. But we are a mixture of all 9 different personalities. Of course, some are very high, some are very low. Some of us could have 2 or 3 very highs and the rest are low. So it depends on your combination in terms of how you assessed yourself in the profile. Now, the type 3, I usually call them the ambitious person because this person kind of lives to work. They are highly task-oriented. They want to get things done. They are, like I did say just now, highly ambitious. They want to set goals, manifest goals, be someone within 5 years, be someone within 10 years. They can be quite task-oriented. They can sometimes make some shortcuts at work in order for them to achieve as much as possible. So these are what we call achievers, right? Achievers, performers, motivators. They can be very high achievers in workplaces. Usually the top sportsmen, the highest achievers, like in a sales force, they are the cream of the crop in terms of performance because of their energy to succeed and the level of ambitiousness. Now, the individualist is quite different. The individualists can be quite elitist, but they've got a great eye for beauty, great eye for aesthetics. Hence, their gifts are in creativity, innovation, doing things very uniquely. They stand out as being quite different from the rest. In fact, they want to be different from the rest. They don't like being ordinary. They're pretty extraordinary in the way they look at things. Hence, even their taste is quite different. They are not usually into big brands, but they want to wear things which are very different from other people. So hence, they're artists because they can look at things and beautify things, improve things. Many of them are in the arts field. Okay, that does not mean that bankers can't be type 4s. People in your teams cannot be. Anyone can belong to any team, but it just depends on their focus of attention and what they are good at quite naturally. Okay, now, the investigator, which is type 5, these people like, I wouldn't say details, but they like depth. There's a difference between the 1 and the 5, and yet they're quite different. They're quite similar. The 5 likes their space. They're the most introverted of the lot, but their gift is in liking as much knowledge as possible. Knowledge, details. They can be very good observers. They can see things and love analysis, going deep into explaining things, being very comfortable with lots of information and being an expert in their field. So these can be considered the smartest of the 9. Like Albert Einstein is a type 5. And so very, I would say, insightful, highly insightful. They can be quite unassuming. I hope I'm not using too many big terms here, but unassuming, meaning you'll never quite expect what's going on their minds, but they can be very deep if you ask them for perspectives, right? So that's the 5 one, the type 5. The type 6, we call them the loyalists, questioner. They do ask a lot of questions, very insightful as well. There's a kind of feeling that the 6 always wonders whether everything has not been settled or looked into. Hence, they can be very inquiring. They ask a lot of questions. They can be quite skeptical sometimes. This is the most pessimistic of the 9 types. But there's a place for pessimism. There's a place for optimism. There's a place for pessimism. And people who are pessimistic tend to dig deeper, ask a lot of questions, be quite curious, think about things which have not been completed, wonder what has not been done yet, So hence, they also tend to worry quite a bit, right? So there's a bit of good and there's a bit of not so good with all the different types. I just mentioned a balance of that. Hence, we call them the loyalists too. That means they're the best gatekeepers. They can stick on to something for the longest time, like even in marriage. I think even when a marriage is in trouble, they can be there and hold on to things for a long time and basically be pretty loyal. So trust is a big issue for the sixes. They're either very trusting or not trusting, but they're very trustworthy. Okay, so there's a difference between, say, trusting and trustworthiness. Now, type 7 is quite opposite from the type 6. So the 7s are the most optimistic of the lot. They're generalists. They love doing many things at the same time. They get bored fast because they want to do different things that excite them. So excitement, joy, high energy, mixing with people, getting out there, doing things, spontaneity. All this is the gift of the 7. Many entrepreneurs are 7s. Many entrepreneurs are 3s. But the 7 entrepreneur is a very visionary person. This person looks into life with a different set of glasses where they can see possibility, right? So these are possibility thinkers. The 8s are what we call the boss. So think about the strongest leaders in countries, in organizations where they mean business. They're no-nonsense people. They're quite tough. Anger drives them, so don't mess with them, I must admit. They've got this ability to see things and move things. They're not necessarily like the type 1 who's wanting things to be done in a certain way. They're not necessarily like the type 5 who's likes analysis and deep details, but they're the ones that move things, right? Top leaders, big leaders, and they don't have to be leaders, but they've got very strong temperament, very strong personality. And I think they can sometimes instill fear. They're not uncomfortable with conflict. So very strong personality. Now, the type 9 is quite the opposite of the type 8. The type 8 is very comfortable with their anger and they can move things by pressing people's buttons, whereas the 9s seek peace. Peacemaker, mediator, they're generally very friendly, easygoing, calm, cordial, diplomatic, very democratic in their style. And so these are what we call friendly people, easygoing. When you have a conversation with a 9, you hardly feel threatened because they're generally very nice people. You feel pretty calm, relaxed. Not so good side of the 9, they can sometimes delay decisions, procrastinate, not take action, be quite relaxed sometimes. So that could be an issue with some 9s. Okay, so that was a summary of the 9 types. And hopefully you got a good picture of what that looks like. I'll not spend too much time on this one, but this is how the diagram is written. 1, 4, 2. See, the 1 connects to the 4 connects to the 2 connects to the 8 connects to the 5 connects to the 7, and the 7 connects to the 1. Why am I sharing this? That's because each number points to 2 other numbers. And I think it's quite important for you to understand what happens when these 2 points, or at least these 2 areas, are pointed towards. So, for example, if you notice carefully for the type 1, it's a toward direction for the arrow. So the 1 goes to the 4. You notice this toward arrow. So that means when the 1 is stressed, they start to demonstrate type 4 characteristics. Now, at this point, you may not know the full range of those characteristics, but I think soon you'll know. So when the 1 is stressed, just for now, just keep that in mind. When the 1 is stressed, they go to 4. When the 1 is relaxed and calm, they will go to 7. So you can sometimes see the good side when they are relaxed, and you can see the not so good side when they are not relaxed. So again, when a 1 is stressed, they go to 4. When a 1 is relaxed, they go to 7. Likewise, when a 2 is stressed, they go to 8. When a 2 is relaxed, they go to 4. When a 3 is stressed, they go to 9. So you may not see the arrows here, but the 9, when the 9 is stressed, they go to 6. When the 6 is stressed, they go to 3. And when the 3 is stressed, they go to 9. And the reverse is true. When the 9 is relaxed, they go to 3. When the 3 is relaxed, they go to 6. When the 6 is relaxed, they go to 9. So it's easy for the 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, because the arrows are here. Somehow I should have put some arrows there. But I hope you just remember each number has what we call a stress line and a relaxed line. Okay? And then you will get to know this a little clearer afterwards when you realize that how each number kind of functions when they're stressed and when they're relaxed. Okay, so this is exactly what I was talking about just now. It's called points of security. Now, points of security are basically what we call the relaxed lines, when each number is relaxed. So with this diagram, you can see the arrows. When the 9 is stressed, they go to 6. So, but security simply means it's the relaxed lines. So it's the away from arrow. So when a 9 goes to 3 with an away from, when 1 goes to 7 with an away from arrow. When it's away from, that's what we call the security line. Toward line is the stress line. Away line, like 9 to 3 is what we call an away arrow. Sorry, not line. Away arrow is like that. 9 going to 3 is relaxed. Okay, I said that just now, but I just thought I'd better say it because I kind of missed out the fact that this is both stress and security, just to demonstrate to you the arrow points. Now, there's another dynamic to this whole diagram. It's called the wing points. Each number has got a wing. So just like birds have got 2 wings on the left and the right-hand side, each number has got a wing. So the 9 has got a 1 wing and an 8 wing. The 1 has got a 2 wing and a 9 wing. The 2 has got a 3 wing and a 1 wing. So what does a wing mean? When you look at your profile eventually, you'll be able to see that if your wing score, which means the scores next to your actual score. Supposing you're a type 1, you look at your 9 score and your 2 score afterwards when you see the profile. If they're high, that means usually if you combine your core personality with your wing score, it gives you a kind of combination of your personality. So we are a core personality plus a few different things. Whatever score you're high on gives you a combination of your personality, and it includes your wings. So for now, I think the most important thing for you to remember is this. Any of your high scores contributes to your personality, okay? So the wings is for now secondary. I won't ask you to remember the wings too much now. It's not so important. Most important is your 2 to 3 highest scores. And that combination gives you a combination of your personality, which you will know how to do kind of when you listen to the whole presentation. All right, so let's start off with the type 1. Okay, let's start off with the type 1 because I think this is the most important section of this presentation because we're talking about the 9 types. So the type 1 is what we call the perfectionist, which I did mention just now. We also call them these names. The ones want to make the world a much better place. Hence, their focus of attention is what's going wrong, errors, what's right, because they're basically right and wrong people. The unconscious childhood message that they grow up with is you're not allowed to make mistakes. Okay, you're not allowed to make mistakes. So I wonder how many times in our lives, if supposing you're a type 1, you may have had this message when you were young. And it's not like your parents may have told you this message all the time, but you grow up thinking based on your personality, because we're all born into our personality, that you kind of look out for what's right and what's wrong, because you are, again, born into your personality type. That is the premise of the Enneagram. Okay, you are born into your personality type. I'm not going to read off all these qualities here. When you need to pause, you can always look at what these strengths are. So these are the strengths of the type 1. You want to make things better. They pursue perfection. They're responsible, congruent, ethical. They're very upright, high integrity, those kinds of things. When overused, now when it gets into the unhealthy side of each number, and you'll see that from the profile later on, that's when you overuse your gifts. So for example, when you want to make things better and you overuse it, you become a perfectionist. And perfectionists become quite inflexible. If you are tense and anxious, uptight. So 2 ways to look at the unhealthy type of each version is when you overuse your gift or when you actually get into the unhealthy version of your type, right? So this is the unhealthy version of the type. Easily frustrated, very opinionated. Self-critic simply means they've got a voice in their head that's always criticizing both themselves and other people outside, right? So there's always this criticism and this complaint, happening. And hence, they tend to experience a lot of anger and frustration. When the one is relaxed, they can actually really let their hair down. That phrase basically means they can start to relax and enjoy themselves. But generally, the one will go to 4 when they are stressed. Now, for the 4s, if you know the 4s, when we finally get there, there's always 4s on the unhealthy side. They can think that something is wrong. I don't have enough resources. I'm not good enough. I'm spoiled. I'm just something wrong with me. On the unhealthy side of 4, they always think that something's wrong with me. When a 1 does not get their way or when they feel misunderstood, they tend to go to 4 because 4s frequently feel misunderstood when in the unhealthy side of their life. Okay, so remember again, when the 1 is stressed, they tend to feel a little like the unhealthy 4. So these are other things you could take note about the type 1 so that it can kind of anchor your understanding of the type 1. So they are very into systems, process, rules, and getting things right. Okay, so very much like someone who follows rules, they set rules. Sometimes we call them the QMer, somebody who likes to quality manage things. They're very much into black and white, good or bad, right or wrong. Language, they tend to speak like you must, you mustn't, you have to, you must, you shouldn't, you can, you cannot, right? So it's very much yes or no. Inner critic, I mentioned that just now. They've got this mind that kind of compares. Is it right? Is it good? Is it wrong? And it's a big criticism always happening in the mind. Number 5, focus on consistency and what is right. Number 6, good person cannot show anger. I must admit, we call them the good person sometimes because they're not supposed to be angry, and hence the anger is suppressed, but they cannot suppress it fully. Ones cannot suppress the anger fully, and hence it gets stuck at the throat, and it manifests through frustration and irritation. Number 7, they're very self-sacrificing. They tend to do quite a lot of things for other people in a self-sacrificing way, always wanting to improve the world. And they have this internal auditor always trying to measure things and compare things and making sure things balance, right? So that's a bit of a summary of the type 1. Let's do a little bit of type 2. And from here, I will move a little faster. The type 2 is called the giver, loving person, helper, nurturer, enabler. As I mentioned just now, they're very much like the Mother Teresa, right? Always helping, always sacrificing. And there's one thing which I think sometimes people may not understand about the 2. They will give, but they also expect something back in return. But what they expect in return is actually more your affection, your acknowledgement, your validation. It's not like they want you to help them as well, because they don't like to be seen as the one who cannot help. They like to be seen as the one who can help, so that people would kind of appreciate them, like them, love them, want their attention. That's why they can be considered givers. Focus of attention, the needs of others, their feelings and their wants. So they are big, warm-hearted beings who always want to make a difference to others. And because they're social beings, all they want from you is your love and attention and your connection and your friendship. Unconscious childhood message is not okay to have your own needs, which is why they hardly express their own needs. Once they do, it might be perceived that they can't give that kind of help to other people. So hence they hardly express that they need help, which is something they need to change. Because once they become balanced, I'll give you help, but when I need help, I also need to ask for help. A lot of 2s, frankly, don't do that. So hence, for the type 2, if you look at it, when they're angry, they can go to the 8. The 8 is the strongest personality. So you notice while the 2 can be very nice, but if they don't get what they want, they can be very tough. It's almost like they may say, after all I've given you, after all I've provided for you, and you can't even appreciate this. So they can be very direct, but usually they're not. Usually they go to a nice side of 4, right? This is the healthy side of 4. Remember, each number, there's a good side and there's a not so good side. And the 4, I think when the 2 goes to the 4, they finally realize their gifts, because the 4 is a very individualistic person. They finally realize their gifts, their strengths, their ability to provide for people, and they feel a lot of pride for themselves, and they want to stand out as being very different. So when they're relaxed, they go to the good side of 4. When they're angry, they go to the not so good side of 8. These are the strengths of the type 2, relationship-oriented, empathic, that means empathy, supportive, and all these very nice qualities, very self-sacrificing. Think of someone who likes to provide. In your team setting, think of someone who's always trying to make a difference to everyone else, right? They're hardly disliked. They're usually very liked. They tend to spot a smile quite often, always readily waiting to be of assistance. But when overused, this is when they become too accommodating, indirect, means not willing to share what kind of difficulties they're going through. They're unwilling to receive. They're so good at giving, but not willing to receive. That means even if you had to assist them, or if you offered to assist, they'll probably say, no, I'm okay, but actually they're not. Guilt-inducing, they may put you on guilt trips, especially if they have given a lot of help to you or they have sacrificed for you. They do expect something back in return, and when you don't, They will make you feel guilty. Quite unaware of their own needs because they're busy giving to others. They overemphasize relationships when actually, yes, they should be thinking about some of the tasks at hand, what kind of work needs to be done, but they're busy completing other people's tasks sometimes. They tend to overextend themselves, and that is they want to give more and more and more, and it sometimes they find it so difficult to stop it. They can feel like a victim sometimes, and they get a bit needy, especially when you ignore them. So these are some of the pointers which can help you remember what the 2 is like. Strategic giving. So what is strategic giving? Basically, they give for a certain reason. They don't just give freely. In fact, they're givers, but they know who to give, at least those who are practicing healthy giving, but they give for a reason as well. Natural capacity to express empathy. They're very empathic. Strong radar to know who needs help. It's like they know who needs help and they can actually notice it very well, even without you expressing it. A type 2 can tell who in the room needs help. Guilt tripping, I mentioned this just now. Pride, they're the best giver. They like to be, but they're very proud about being the best giver out there. They are very proud of their ability to make a difference. What if all the giving was actually taking? What does that mean? Actually, some unhealthy 2s can give in order to take back. Okay, so that's not a good trait, but some 2s know exactly why they give. Path of development, altruism, that is giving without ever wanting to receive back. And so that's basically all about the 2, right? So generally a really nice person, very healthy in their intentions. They are always wanting to provide for others, and that will be a wonderful asset to any team. Let's move on to the type 3. The type 3 is called the achiever, effective person, performer, motivator, cheerleader. 3s want to make the world a much more efficient place, much more effective place. So they're always very task-oriented. They're very driven to achieve, driven to be the best in the team. The focus of attention is task, goals, recognition for accomplishments. And a message that they grow up with frequently is it's not okay to have your own feelings and identity. What does that mean? We call 3s the doer, and that is how they identify themselves. Forget about who I am. My identity does not matter as long as I can do. So hence, at some point, they may forget what they stand for, but they just want to be remembered for being the person who was the best. And they forget their own persona. They are identified for what they can do, which is not a healthy thing. Now, for the type 3, if you notice here, when a 3 is stressed up, they go to 9. What does that mean? When a 3 loses their job, when a 3 feels like they've got no direction, when they've lost their purpose, they feel like a little lost. And 9s, because they're very relaxed, they can sometimes just sit down and not bother too much about where they're going or what they need to do. That's the unhealthy side of 9. So if a 3 goes to the unhealthy side of 9, then it's like they are lost. They may not know what to do. But when a 3 goes to 6, 6 is usually very clear. Very clear, they're good planners. They look for whatever is not being completed. They look out for what needs to be done for the team. Very supportive, very task-oriented. Those are the movements of the type 3. All the strengths are here: success, dynamic, active. They read an audience well. They're very charismatic. They overcome problems easily. They're optimistic, enterprising. So all these qualities are here. When overused, they become overly competitive. They don't like to lose. Workaholic, they don't stop working. Abrupt and impatient. A lot of 3s are very impatient because they want things done fast. If you do not know what's happening, please go and find out and only speak to me when you're ready. Chameleon-like, because they can adjust themselves to different environments. If they meet someone who's very successful, they can adjust themselves. If they have to do work which involves things which they don't know, sometimes they know how to adjust themselves such that they can get to know what they need to do, or they can get to know what they did not know before and blend in very well into an environment that makes them successful. They can become overextended, which simply means they can do a lot more than is required just to be extremely efficient or be extremely successful. Limited time for personal relationships, ignores feelings, self-promoting. Okay, so everything is there. Again, I'm not going to explain everything. All right, in some ways, we can actually remember the type 3 is the ability of the type 3s to charm and impress others. So they can do this really very well. The chameleon effect, the ability to adjust to any situation quickly and efficiently. Work smart versus work hard. So these are people who can cut corners or create shortcuts, and create the most efficient way to work. Deception, that is, they can deceive others into believing that they can actually handle anything in life. So it's not like the threes are deceptive, but they know how to deceive themselves into believing that they can do anything. So we call that actually self-deception. Number 4, they lack patience. I said that just now. They need more rest and relaxation because they're always working. Work, work, work. That's all they stand for. 7, luxury and high life. They love their brands. So that's not bad. That's a good thing. But they can overemphasize style and wealth for some threes, not all threes. So we now move on to the type 4s. We call them the individualists, the original person, tragic, romantic. So all these terms can be a little difficult to understand, especially because things like this are usually used sometimes in drama and so forth. But for the 4s, if we can just recall, they're very creative, innovative, they're quite different, they're quite unique. They tend to delve into things which other people don't, because there's a part of them that feels like they don't belong in this world. Okay, so it's a bit unusual, but the good side of them is that they're very creative. I think Steve Jobs definitely had some 4 in him, right? Definitely. Hence, when it comes to designing, when it comes to creating, they got the best gifts. 4s want to make the world a much more beautiful place, be different, stand out. Hence, the focus of attention is what is missing and will I be rejected? Unconscious childhood message. This is a kind of message that they grow up with in their life without even thinking about it. It's not okay to be too functional or too happy. That sounds a bit strange because most of us want to be a lot happier. But 4s have got this tendency to feel like something is wrong in my life, something is missing. So they're always in a state of longing. Longing simply means how I wish. I wish things were this way, how I wish things were that way. So hence, hardly satisfied with status quo. So some of the strengths, original, good taste, all these very exquisite kinds of descriptors, right? But they've got some really nice descriptors here, like compassionate. They can tell when someone is not feeling good, when someone is emotionally not well. They've got a very high emotional intuition, this ability to just read people's emotions well. Very cultured because they like drama. Not all of them, just in case you have a type 4, does not mean you will tick every box. Okay, so this is important for everyone to understand. You will not tick every single box, but if you're high on a certain number, you will tick quite a lot of the boxes, okay, but not all. When they overuse this, then they become snobbish, attention demanding. They want people to listen to them. They want people to give them attention. Their emotional system within a day can be quite unpredictable, right? So they can be up and down, happy, really happy and loud, and then sad and morose, or what we call quiet and sad. Quite guilt-ridden. Somehow there's a lot of guilt that they feel within themselves because maybe they feel like something is wrong. They've not handled things well. They tend to criticize themselves quite a bit and so forth, right? So there's quite a few descriptors here. Now, when a 4 is relaxed, because remember, against the flow of the arrow is what we call the relaxed line. When a 4 is relaxed, they can finally get into action because the 1s are about taking action and correcting things, whereas 4s are very emotional. So in a healthy side, they can be very balanced, and that is emotional plus taking action, making things right, doing things properly. But when they are stressed up, they suddenly forget about themselves and they start to focus on other people. It's a kind of distraction. Forget about me. Let me just serve. Let me just look into other people's needs. And that means they've kind of rejected their own needs, right? So that's why we call the stress line. Okay, so some different ways we can remember a 4. Do take note that they are always thinking what's missing. So in a conversation, or maybe when they think about you, they may nitpick, right? And say, okay, what's missing? Because they're always longing for something better, always thinking what can be better, what can be a lot more attractive. So besides that, there's this feeling that they sometimes feel abandoned, like nobody cares for them, nobody looks into their emotional needs. So sometimes there's this feeling of sadness, quite frequently with some 4s. Unpredictable emotional system, this up and down emotional system, these are the parts which are not so good. Sweet sadness, they're comfortable with sadness, which is good, right? Because when you're comfortable with sadness, you can dig into the depths of your emotions and slow things down and see what's missing, what's not good, what's bad, and they reflect really very well. So fours are very reflective, and that means they're very insightful as well. When you reflect a lot and you allow your body to slow down quite a bit, you get yourself to see things which most people can't see. So we call that sweet sadness. Tragic romantic, they can overemphasize emotions or dramatize emotions. Maybe sadness can sometimes turn into grief, or happiness can sometimes turn to joy. They can make situations more emotionally intense, more exciting, more joyful, or more intense and more sad, right? So tragic romantic, that's what it's called. They want to be different. They want to stand out. Like Michael Jackson is a hardcore type 4, right? Wanting to be different, wanting to be quite elite, nobody of his kind. So hence 4s are very unique people, right? Their tastes, their homes, what they like. They tend to have a kind of push and pull feeling. And that is, they sometimes would want to be close to you, but when you get too close, there's this fear that I may lose you. So then they kind of push you away. Now, some of the positive aspects of the 4, of course, creative, innovative, different, emotionally sensitive. They can be very empathic and compassionate, right? So remember, each type, there are some good qualities and some not so good qualities. All right. And last but not least, highly emotionally intuitive. I mentioned that just now. We now move to the type 5, right? The type 5 is the investigator, wise person, observer, thinker, private. Just a little summary of the 5. Remember, they're the ones who like to analyze things. They like depth. They like details. They are like scientists, sometimes like to investigate things, and they're great observers. Okay, so as mentioned here, great observers. 5s want to make the world a much more enlightened place, so hence knowledge is important. Now, not all 5s will say, I read a lot of books, but because they observe well, they can theorize, they can come up with their own thoughts because they also are good at keeping their own space. They are the biggest introverts, so they don't like to mix around too much with people. And because they have their own space, they can investigate and think about things over a lengthened period. Focus of attention is watching, understanding, seeking more knowledge, not just through books. Sometimes it's just through conversation or just watching things. It could be YouTube. It could be just gathering information from their minds and watching people. Unconscious childhood message is not okay to be too comfortable or incompetent. So sometimes when they do not know something, you may not hear from them. So in a classroom, 5s could observe for a very long time and figure it out themselves. They may not ask many questions. They hate to sound stupid, so you'll never hear from them. But once they are equipped and they're ready, that's when you hear from them. So they are very measured and they're very careful when it comes to their image. They don't want to look slow, unaware, hence they would like to figure it out. Now, the problem with that, of course, is when you only want to figure it out by yourselves, you may not tend to mix around and gather knowledge with other people, get into a conversation, start to exchange information. They need to sometimes do it by themselves. But generally, very insightful people because they are not the sort to leave things and not be aware of what's happening in life, right? They really need to be aware. Some of their strengths: analytical, insightful, observant, perceptive, all these cool things about knowledge because they're very heady people. When overused, they can be quite detached because they like their own space. They hold back, they may not share, especially when they are lacking confidence. They can be overly independent. That means they do not seek other people's attention, do not seek other people's help. They are self-sufficient. They love to be independent and self-sufficient. They may underemphasize relationships, but not all 5s are like that, right? They're social 5s as well. But they like their company to be small, not too large, right? And sometimes they can be quite stubborn, hold on to certain things that they believe very strongly about. They may not be willing to let go some of their ideals and some of their thoughts. When a 5 is relaxed, they go to the confidence side of 8. This is when they start sharing. This is when they start teaching. This is when they want other people to benefit from what they know. And that's a confident 8, being in large groups, like scientists sharing their findings or a leader sharing the best way to handle things. When they are stressed up, they can sometimes go all over the place. Like 7s tend to do many things at the same time. They get bored very fast. So maybe when 5s accumulate too much of information, they can get lost in their own knowledge, or they can get lost in the amount of data that they have accumulated, because 7s can be huge multitaskers. Okay, some ways to remember the 5 are depth, trusting information and data. They're very deep, right? And they are not shallow people at all. They love their space and privacy. Feelings and emotions, they don't express much. Sometimes we call them the most unfeeling because they're very heady. So sometimes when they're very heady, it does not go down to the heart. So they may not be very heartful. Okay, not all again, but quite a lot of them do not use much of their heart. They use a lot of their head. Compartmentalization is a gift of the 5. That means work is work, home is home. One problem does not have to influence another problem. So they can what we call dissociate. I can dissociate from some things which are challenging me and just focus on what works. So this ability to divide the mind into 5 or 6 or 7 and not let one box affect the next box. We call that compartmentalization, or the ability to dissociate from other different tasks that I'm dealing with. They don't like superficial small talk. That's right. Whatever kind of small talk we do has to add value. There has to be a reason. I won't just socialize for the sake of socializing. People can be overwhelming to 5s. They are very analytical, self-sufficient. They can live on their own, function on their own very well because they're independent. Okay, let's do the type 6. Right, we move to the type 6 called the loyalist. And there are different labels used on the loyalist, the loyal person, devil's advocate. So what does that mean? The loyalists on the not so good side tend to be the most pessimistic of the 9 types. And they tend to ask a lot of questions. They are inquiring, they are curious, they tend to leave no stones unturned. So that's also a good thing, right? So hence in asking questions, they are problem solvers, but they tend to believe that sometimes people may not be trusted. So that's why they trust themselves a lot to get things done properly and to make sure that other people do what they're supposed to do. Trust can be a big issue. Like I think for 6s, trusting other people can be difficult. And when that happens, they sometimes will make sure that systems and processes and are all in place. And so when 6s tend to think that maybe people may not do what they're supposed to do, they tend to ensure that systems and processes get settled and sorted out properly. Now, the unconscious childhood message is it's not okay to trust yourself, which means sometimes when they don't trust themselves, they tend to get very prepared or overly prepared, as in there's always like a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. Could be good. And the not so good part is they'll start to worry that whatever has been planned out may not actually manifest. So not trusting the self can require that the 6 gets very prepared. Now, some of the gifts of the 6, loyalty is important, trustworthiness. They are prepared, responsible, strategic, very sharp. I must admit they are mentally very alert. In fact, that radar always works. The mental radar is always looking out for who is not going to show up, what's not going to happen, where are things going to fail, where are things going to flop. So there's always this thing where, yes, 6s can be very ready for disaster and crisis. In a disaster or crisis situation, the 6s are the most prepared because they would have prepared for disaster. When overused, yes, you'll get all those different qualities, suspiciousness, worrying, just wondering when is the first disaster going to happen. Hence, the need for guidelines is important. The need for rules is important so that everyone, or it becomes more predictable. Now, when the 6 is relaxed, they go to 9, and that means they can let things go because the 9s are relaxed, they are easygoing, they're calm. But when the 6 starts to get stressed up, they become very task-oriented, they become very focused on making sure tasks get completed, and they can be quite transactional in that sense. So some things to remember the 6 by is, number 1, they have a kind of perspective where you're guilty until proven innocent. So make sure you come in prepared, make sure you come in being very ready to answer yourself. They're alert to danger and threats, which is why in a crisis situation, when it comes to risk, they know how to manage their risks. Counterphobic, driven by fear. Some 6s are not phobic. They can fight their fear by going head on. And some 6s are phobic, which means they're always worried, they're scared, they may be a bit insecure that something bad may happen. Multiple precautions. That's about planning for disaster and making sure that they've got an alternative plan ahead of them. Reliable, dependable, tradition and system is important. They're very traditional in that sense. They look out for practices from the past and they want to follow practices which work. So safety and predictability is important. Dealing with fear, I think fear is a constant emotion which happens for the sixes. So they are constantly thinking about what is not going to happen, which creates fear. So fear and insecurity are big features for the six. Serial doubter, what does that mean? I think doubt is a big practice of the sixes. They tend to doubt things, but one way it can actually help people is that you doubt it until it works. Serial doubter just simply means someone who frequently doubts. And in a way, it can be useful because when we doubt, we get more prepared. So these are 8 anchor points for you to recall what the 6 may be like. It can sound a little negative, but the good part, believe me, is that they're actually very sociable. They communicate well, and they're very alert, very ready, very alert, very intuitive. So hence having them on your team, basically things get done, things get completed. And these are people who are great gatekeepers, gatekeeper of the rules, great gatekeepers of completion of work. So lots of good qualities as well. The type 7 is the polar opposite of the type 6. We call them the enthusiast, joyful person, generalist, visionary. In short, their qualities are someone who experiences joy. They're creative, they're different, they're spontaneous. They love connecting with people. They're big socializers. They love doing many things at the same time. The reason behind that is that they get bored very easily, and hence they need to be stimulated most of the time. Sevens want to make the world a much more wonderful place, and their focus of attention is exciting options, possibilities to ensure that their life is stimulating. The unconscious childhood message, it's not okay to depend on anyone for anything, because they think that the world is quite overwhelming. People around them are usually very stressed up and they don't know how to have fun. That is the big picture. But these are all their areas of strength: imaginative, excitable, optimistic, all these upbeat qualities. And when overused, they can be quite impulsive because they get impatient with people who are either boring, who are very linear thinking, and those who do not know how to be creative and different. They can be quite rebellious because if they find that people are not being exciting or excitable, this is when they just avoid and they rebel against rules. They don't like rules because rules create too much of discipline. They create too much of strictness. And yes, so they are quite scattered in the mind, which means simply they like to do many things at the same time. Being focused can be a big challenge for sevens. When a type 7 is stressed, they go to 1. And that means because of the involvement of so many things at the same time, they find that they may not be able to handle the amount of information that's happening. So they tend to get very one-ish, which means they tend to put things in a kind of rule form, bulleted, numbered. So they tend to kind of lose their personality whenever they get stressed. But when a 7 is relaxed, they need their own company. So that is, they are much more grounded. They move away from people. They start to focus a lot more and they need their own space. So that's like the opposite of themselves. So when they're relaxed, they actually can stick around by themselves. Do take note, the 7s love freedom. They also are generally very joyful and optimistic. Some of the emotions they have is all the basic happy emotions. They future trip, which means sometimes they cannot stay grounded and stay with the present, but they're always tripping into the future. And we call this type the person who naturally experiences attention deficit disorder. So yes, being focused on something for a long time can be quite difficult for the 7s. Reframe, they're good at reframing, which simply means how to make a negative positive. They can change their thinking very easily, especially if they're struggling. And that's called reframing. Rapid thoughts, the mind moves very fast, which is why 7s also speak very fast. It's hard for them to slow down because boredom sets in. So they tend to move through things very quickly so that they can move on to the next thing. So boredom is a problem for 7s. Bending rules is a big one for 7s because they want things their way. They can be quite demanding about how things should be more interesting. So things are boring, things are very structured. Like in organizations, they can sometimes struggle with too many rules. So they need to create their own rules, and sometimes in the process, they need to bend some rules. Sometimes they're not taken seriously because of their character of joy, laughing, sometimes making fun of things. But that happens with the unhealthy seven. With the healthy sevens, is just generally a very happy person. And last but not least, they like to escape from pain so that they can keep experiencing pleasant experiences. Hence, unpleasantness becomes very difficult for the type 7. We move on to the type 8, the challenger. This is the boss, the powerful person, the one with the strength, bravery, the ability to confront difficult situations and move things forward. So the boss is just like, as they say, the boss, they are great controllers of difficult situations. And whenever there are arguments or this confrontations, I think they can lead this and push things forward very well. 8s want to make the world a much more just place. So when it comes to justice, seeking fairness, they can make things happen very well. Their focus of attention, hence, is in justice, dominance, pushing things forward, very much like a leader. And the unconscious childhood message, which is a message they grow up with, is it's not okay to be vulnerable. A lot of 8s don't like to show their feelings. They don't like to be exposed. They may find difficulty saying, I'm sorry, or I'm wrong, or you are right, and I absolutely love what you said. But a very balanced 8 can do that. So 8s can be very, I wouldn't say emotional. They won't show their emotions, but when they're very stressed and they feel that nobody's supporting them, I think they can get quite emotional. And some of their strong qualities are very direct. All the things on the right-hand side here, strong-willed. They overcome obstacles really very well. They've got high energy to push things forward and make things happen, especially lead a team, lead through being very gutsy. That means having a lot of strong conviction in themselves. They are fearless. When overused, they can be very difficult. It's quite hard to handle them because they have got very strong emotions of anger. Insensitive, demanding, they can sometimes be very toxic if they are on the unhealthy side. They don't like to lose a battle, so they may argue even though they are losing. They may just make you feel like a loser, or they'll put you down or criticize and condemn. Now, the 8s, when they're stressed up, they'll isolate themselves quite often because they feel nobody is on their side and they feel quite alone. But when they are relaxed, they're very protecting, right? It's the type 2 is a giver. But the 8 that goes to the 2 is a protector. They want to help people. They want to be on your side. They want to make sure that you're fine. Okay, so all those good qualities of an 8, these are how we can remember them. The parental background, generally parents were strong. Usually they would have had one parent who was an 8. They are intense. Everything they do is all in the extreme, whether it's their voice, whether it's their action, whether it's their eating, whether it's their drinking. Everything is done with intensity. It's never halfway. It's always intense. Attentive to who holds power in a room. And 8 is always cognizant or aware of who is the one holding power. Either they want to overthrow or they want to match that power. But power is extremely important to them. Who is in control of a situation? If no one is in control, then they would want to take control. 8s need to deal with the anger. Now, anger is a good emotion, provided it can be controlled. So let's not have that notion that anger is a bad thing. Whereas 8s are filled with healthy anger, which means it helps them to push forward and make things happen. Vulnerability is their main path of development, which means this is something they need to learn to, they need to learn to be a lot more effective at allowing themselves to make mistakes, exposing themselves sometimes to say sorry, not be the one who's always correct. They are big protectors, as I mentioned just now, and they're always in a time crunch. They're always in a hurry. So never slow things down, never go in undecided, always go in with an action plan, go in knowing what you want to say, what you want to do. Be straight and direct to the point because 8s have got a lot on their minds and they like to take control and move things forward. So never slow the process down, always go in planned and ready. And finally, we can talk about the type 9. Type 9 is very different from the type 8 because they are like the polar opposite. Type 9s are diplomatic, relaxed, easygoing, calm, hardly angry. In fact, they suppress their anger. They are the most diplomatic of the lot. So it's easy to talk to them. It's easy to deal with them. They're friendly. So hence the peaceful person. Nines want to make the world a much more peaceful place. They tend to take in all points of view, be very diplomatic and democratic in their style, and make sure that everyone is respected. So hence, when it comes to contributing ideas, sometimes the nine would take in everyone's idea and then finally come up with an idea that encapsulates everyone else's idea. So the unconscious childhood message is not okay to assert yourself. So they tend to give in, they tend to allow others to have their way, and then they decide after that. The strength, diplomacy, down to earth, easygoing. It's very easy to get to know a nine because they are calm. They're never picky, they're never choosy. They're usually nice. That's the word I use with them, nice. Inclusive, including people into everything they can. Receptive, open, patient, all right. All those nice, different values. When overused, they avoid conflict. They are not assertive. They may forget their own needs. They may not address certain things and procrastinate. They can be passive-aggressive, which means their anger builds up from inside. Sometimes they hold on to things for a long time and anger comes much later. They can have low energy because they allow things to happen sometimes rather than make things happen. They can be quite stubborn, holding on to their ideas. When the nine is stressed, they start to worry about what has not been done because they would have put a lot of things aside and not addressed it. And they start to worry about what do I need to address right now. But when they're relaxed, when they found their vision, they found their purpose rather, and they know what to do, they become very task-oriented and they become very ready to move forward and get things done. How we can remember the nine, they have many points of view, and they also like listening to many points of view as well. They are the best diplomats because they are diplomatic, they are cordial, they are easy to get to know, they are very curious about other people. They tend to give in to other people's needs a lot. So just like the type 2 is a very empathic, compassionate person, whereas the type 9 tends to give in to other people's needs. So if you want to do something and they don't want, they'll probably say, yes, let's go and do it. Their needs are not so important, by the way. Other people's needs are much more important. Other people's agendas is all about what you need, not what I need. What is your relationship with anger? Well, they suppress anger as much as they can. They don't want to show anger, neither do they want to feel anger. Sometimes anger does not even come to their body. So they have learned to suppress it a lot. They don't like disagreement. Nines are sometimes compared to sloths. So let's not go there. But sloths, basically, they know how to conserve energy, right? So nines never put in their full energy because they want to conserve it. And so they can hold on to something for a long time. They can hold on to a dream for a very long time and let the energy burn slowly. They are good at numbing themselves, especially when there's pain. When they've not addressed something for a long time, they can numb it or hide away or avoid it for a long time. Okay, so I'd like us to move into the next phase of this presentation. Hopefully you got to know the 9 types fairly well. You can't get to know it completely just from that short presentation, but I think it's time we get into your profiles. So if you have your profile, and I believe everyone who's watching this already has their profile, please listen to this next phase of this presentation. First thing you'd like to see from your profile is this. You look at the diagram on the left-hand side, and you look at this pie, this piece of pie from the whole circle. Now, that would be your core type. That means your primary type. And in this case, this person's a type 5, which can also be reflected in the top score. So all your scores, your top scores to your bottom score starts from here in descending order. Highest score, second highest score, third highest score, fourth highest score, and so forth. Usually, we look at your 3 highest scores, especially if they're close together. In this case, the 2 highest scores are very close together. So yes, they are considered your highest gifts. Now, if it's 53, it's okay. Take it like almost like exam scores, upon 100. 100 means very high, 90 something is also very high, 80 something is also high, 70 something is also quite high. As it goes further down, then you're not as high. So 50 something simply means you have that quality in you. It's just not as prevalent as your very high scores. Also remember, these are scores in which you rated yourself. So the way in which you see yourself is high on these scores. Okay, we'll analyze these further. So type 5 is your core score, and you got what we call your stress scores and your stress type and your relaxed type. So just like the diagram, we said when 5s are stressed, they go to 7. And when 5s are relaxed, they go to 8. So this is just representing it slightly differently from the diagram that you saw just now. And then the wing, like we said, a wing. Wing is important if your score next to your core type is high. In this case, this person's a 5. The 6 score is 41. So that means your wing will not be as strong. We will ignore that. So for now, let's just ignore the wing. It's not so important at this stage. We focus on your highest, second highest, and third highest. The other thing we like to focus on is your lower score. If your lower score is important to your work, then, and when you got a low score there, it can be a problem. So this person is very low on type 4. Now, usually if your lower score would mean you may find it a bit difficult to work with someone who's a type 4. You may find that you don't have the skills and the competencies related to type 4. And you find that this is not something you can develop well as a type 4. Even this type as well, because anything less than 10 is very low. Anything less than 15 is also very low. So all these scores for this particular profile, this person will have quite a lot of challenges doing work which requires these skills. And of course, you can look it up in this video, which I've talked about based on the type 1, the type 7, and so forth. Now, for someone like this, before I analyze the top 3 scores, I'd like to go through this part, the less developed and developed. Now, each type has got, we've given 9 positive qualities or descriptions, and we've given 9 negative descriptions. So 99 percentile simply means that you have rated yourself very high on the 5, and you've got 99 less developed. That means when you rated the unhealthy or less developed qualities, you probably rated it high, or this person rated it high. And even the developed or healthy qualities, this person also probably related it or answered it quite highly as well. Or this person would have rated it high on the developed aspects of this competency. So what does this mean with the colors? Between the developed and the less developed, we have shaded the higher of the two. So you notice 99 versus 96, 92 versus 76. So it's easy to track which is higher between the developed and less developed. You just know that the shaded one is the higher between the two. Now, is this part important? Yes, because if your developed is high and your less developed is low, it means you're a very healthy type 5. In this case, this person's, less developed is higher than the developed, which means the unhealthy is much higher than the healthy. I wouldn't say much higher. It means the unhealthy score is higher than the healthy score, right? And so even by 3 points, it still shows that this person is functioning a bit more from the less developed, which means either overused skill or just the less developed skill. So what does that mean? For example, a 5 can be very introverted. They like the space. They're very self-sufficient. They are very detailed. I wouldn't say detailed, but they like depth. They like to analyze. When someone is showing less developed is much higher, then it's saying that maybe this person is overly detailed or analysis to paralysis. Maybe they like the space so much that they don't like to mix with people. They are more hidden. They hardly allow themselves to be vulnerable and share things. So that's what I mean by the more less developed scores. For a 9, if this person is showing much more less developed. Now, how do you know what's a healthy gap? There's a healthy gap when it's about 20 to 25 points, okay, or 25 percentile points. For example, 76 to 92 is less than 20. So the gap between the less developed and the developed is quite narrow, which means this person is showing quite a lot of less developed versions of the 9. Now, if supposing this person's score here was 92, and then this developed score is about, say, 82, then that's just a gap of 10, which means they have quite a lot of unhealthy scores, but they've also got a lot of healthy scores too. So kind of balances it out. Now, in this case, the type 3, it shows 56 and 51. Also, the gap is very narrow. Okay, hence it means this person is showing quite a lot of developed versions of the 3, but quite a lot of less developed or unhealthy qualities of the 3 as well. Now for the 9, remember the qualities of a 9 generally are diplomatic, friendly, easygoing, calm, quite relaxed. Now, if they're showing less developed, that means they could be potentially delaying a lot of decisions. They're not quick to act on things. They could give in a lot because 9s are the give-in kind. And they may just be too diplomatic, too nice, accept anything that comes. So that's the less developed 9. The more developed 9 is a bit more assertive and they're much more activity-driven. So this person showing unhealthy 5, unhealthy 9, but healthy 3. Okay, healthier 3. Of course, we can go through all the numbers and do the same analysis, but remember, we only usually focus on the top 3. And when we combine the top 3 numbers, for example, a 593 is generally someone who is a little bit more introverted, because a 5 is an introverted score, and 9 is an introverted score, whereas the 3, this person could be an action-oriented person, even though the score is not so high. Okay, if the score was higher, then I think there will be more action. But even with a lower score, as long as it's above 50, it could be quite high. Now, what else can I say? Yes, I think just for the sake of this example, we just focus on the top 3. So if I give a summary of the 593, someone who is more introverted, they are good analyzers, they are more self-sufficient, they may not mix around too much, they're quite introverted, but at the same time, he's quite action-oriented. Okay, so that's a kind of quick summary of this profile. Let's do another one, because this person's a 359. It's almost like quite similar to the other one because they had similar types, but a type 3 with a high type 3. So this person is action-oriented, usually task-focused, they're ambitious. Now, unhealthy type 3 simply means someone who overworks, because on the unhealthy side of 3, they are very task-oriented, they live to work, they are ambitious, they are hungry, they want to manifest goals. If they are like a boss, they could be quite into their work. They could be quite into pushing the team to get work done. So someone who is very task-oriented versus the healthy version. Now, as a 5, also, they could be quite a recluse. Recluse simply means they may not be seen by other people. They rather hide and do their work behind the scenes. They are very self-sufficient. This person most likely is a good analyzer. They are very deep. They're knowledgeable. They have a lot of wisdom. They have a lot of skills. But they rather do it in the background, not so much as a leader, not someone who wants to teach, not someone who wants to share as much, because there's more unhealthy versions. Now, the 9, diplomatic, easygoing, calm, grounded leadership. Now, Barack Obama, by the way, is a type 9. So just in case you feel that the 9s are relaxed, no. I think when they're healthy, they know what they're doing, but they still do it with a lot of humility. We call that servant leadership, the way to serve. They know how to serve other people well, rather than serve their own needs. Now, this person's 7 is also quite high, because if you look at it, 79. Anything above 60 is okay, but this one, 79, is quite a high score. So even though they've got more quiet scores here, the 7 may be because they're involved in doing many things. This person could be quite a busy person at the same time, right? High 3 is already very busy. High 7 is also very busy. So I see someone who is always at the forefront, doing things, getting things done, moving things forward. It's just that I think they're overworked because there's more unhealthy scores. Now, the lowest score is a 1, which would mean, I think, for this person who's very busy, details don't matter as much as long as things get done. Like a type 3 and a type 7, type 3 especially, they would actually cut corners, they would bend some rules, they'll work smarter, so they may not be the most detailed. Notice that the type 6 is also someone who looks at rules, regulations, structure, system, but this person's 6 is also low. So it's quite evident that when it comes to rules, structure, making sure that everyone follows the rules that are set, this person may be quite low at it, right? So they will generally want to finish things, move things forward, but they may bend some rules. If you notice, the 8 is also high. That means this person could be quite assertive, right? Yes, assertive. They can be quite demanding, hence a lot of high scores. So I see someone down here who obviously is proactive. proactive, quite a pusher, can be quite demanding, and may not be someone who's into details. Let's do one more. So for this profile, it's slightly different from the other two. Notice that this is a combination of a 1 and a 5. 1's about details, 5 is about analysis, 5 is about depth, 1's about following rules. So, and the 6 is also about following rules, regulations, making sure people do what they're supposed to do. They like structure and system. So when you get a 1, 5, 6 together, you're looking at someone who is rule-bound, who likes system, who likes structure, who follows regulations, who wants to ensure that the team and the department is equipped with systems and processes. And now the only problem is I can see less developed in the top 3. So when it comes to 1, they may be overly obsessed with following rules and they can be quite inflexible. For the 5, they can be very detailed. I won't say detailed, they like a lot of depth. So when it comes to analysis and information, they may overwhelm you with a lot of information. And sometimes when it comes to explanations, it can be a bit complex because they go deep and they may just try to prove to you that they know more sometimes. They're also very introverted. Type 6. Now the gap, if you look at the gap between for the 5, it is quite high. So that would mean this person is probably much more introverted. For the type 6, yes, unhealthy 6 could be quite insecure. They could also feel a bit skeptical, unsure about people's intentions. And so they get very prepared for a plan A, plan B, plan C. So that's this kind of 1, 5, 6. Very detailed, I must say. They can be quite serious because 5s don't talk as much. 6s are more skeptical. 1s are a lot more driven by getting things correct. So you're looking at someone who's a bit more intense, someone who's a lot more left-brained, someone who wants more details. Yes, top 3 score. Lower scores, type 2 and type 3 and 7. So these are relationship scores. In fact, 2, 3, 7, 4 are relationship scores. So you can also kind of determine that this person is not so relationship focused. They're more task focused. That means they'll be more serious. Okay, so that's like a quick summary of that profile. If you look at this profile, it's a little harder to read because this person has got high scores on so many scores. So when I initially coached this person, I found it very difficult because not many people have got high scores on 5 and 8 and 3 and 6 and 1. It's almost like you've got gifts in so many areas. So I think, but after meeting this person, I realized they're actually multitaskers. They're very active. They are actually, even though she's a 5, this person, I realized they are very assertive. They know what they want. They're very forward thinking. They are action oriented. And this person is very detailed as well. So I noticed, all these types can exist within one person because they put a lot of their life into life. They put a lot of their behaviors, their attitude, all goes into life. So a very hungry person. This person identifies very lowly with the creative side, maybe. So they're very much into getting results, moving things forward, being very active in their personal life, experiencing as much as they can. That's when you get a lot of high scores, very active in their life. Also, very healthy scores. So, and true enough, this person was a very friendly, yet very approachable and energetic person. So it's very consistent with her score as well. So sometimes while we look for the top 3, if you notice that there are high scores in the top, in this case, 6 scores, in fact, 7 scores or 8 scores, yes, you may want to determine that this person feels that they've got a lot of each of those qualities in them. Okay, now, yes, not many of these, but you will definitely see some of them. I'd like to just cover a few Q&A questions because sometimes people do ask, do your scores change? So your scores can change, especially during a transitional period, like maybe the pandemic was a transitional period, when you have to work a lot harder, when your circumstances change, or maybe when your job scope changes, you will tend to start doing things very differently. And your type scores will start to change. But it's not like your personality changes. Your personality does not change. But the way you look at life starts to change during a transitional period. Hence, when you answer a test, the way you answer the test is going to be different based on how you look at life. So we can't escape these aspects in life. And so that's the only reason why your scores are going to change. So don't ever think your personality changes massively. It does not. But your response to life circumstances will shift during those transitional periods. And then it will come back to normal when things start to end or things start to change. Like, for example, now, the pandemic is kind of finishing, and your life will kind of get back to normal again. So that's when you start to see your essence reappear. Another question that's frequently asked is, what if most of my scores are on the unhealthy zone, or what we call the less developed scores? Don't worry. I think we all go through a time where the way we think or the way we've been brought up sometimes has been quite tough. So the way we look at life sometimes can be quite restricted, or maybe we feel quite angry with ourselves because we've always been kind of criticized. So there are many reasons why we may have less developed scores. Perhaps also you've been working so hard that you forgot about looking into your life and introspecting and doing things that help you balance up your life. Most important thing is to focus on your core score. While I won't get into exercises here, but you can always write to me on granville@eqworld.com, GRANVILLE @eqworld.com. And I'll share with you 1 or 2 tips in terms of how you can bring yourself to the healthy side. I can't give too much information because if you attend the class, then it's a lot easier. But otherwise, don't be too affected. The other thing you could do is you can Google, right? How do I become a healthier version of Enneagram 7? What are healthy things I can do for the Enneagram type 5, right? So you can always Google, literally say whatever you are looking for, and that's the best place for you to find some answers as well, okay? Another question that's frequently asked is, how often should I do the test? I would not recommend you do it too often, but once in 6 months is good, provided you know if supposing your scores have been a bit low or unhealthy or what we call less developed, and you have consciously chosen to do something about it. So how you live your life is how equates to how you think, and how you think equates to how you feel. So if you made some considerable or conscious changes to how you live your life, or how you look at life, and what are you doing to consciously change some behaviors and attitudes, then it's good to have an indicator about 4 to 5 months down the road or 6 months to see your scores, whether you are really on track. Because when you do your test, you may think that you can actually remember how you answered before, but the answer is no, because there are 162 questions. The way you answer it would have been quite different the next time you do it, especially if it's 6 months down the road. So it's good to know whether you're on track with being a better version of yourself. So hence 6 months to a year, obviously it's a good time. But if you feel nothing has changed, you've not taken action, you've not chosen to adjust some of your habits, then I would not advise you to take the test again until you've made some very conscious changes. All right, so we've come to the end of this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. If there are any questions, please email me on granville@eqworld.com, Granville, GRANVILLE @eqworld.com. I've given as much as I could on this presentation. Of course, there's a lot. We've got a 1-day version, we've got a 2-day version, we've got a 4-day version certification, and all we did was just exceed an hour on this presentation. So please Google as well. If you want to find out something specific, just Google and you should be able to find some answers as well. Thank you very much. This is Granville signing off, and hopefully you benefited from this. Bye-bye.